Okay, so we left off at the refreshers on the frequency table, and we're going to talk about measures of center next. All right, I'm looking at the Excel sheet, but I really need to look at the directions before I jump in here. So one of the most basic things that we'll do with statistics is to talk about what's typical. And that's a measure of center. We have the mean, the median, the mode, and the mid-range as four basic measures of center. The mean is probably the most famous and the most used as a first attempt at an average. But there are reasons why we would look at the median or the mode or the mid-range. Um, and I give an example here of, I think this is accurate. I don't know if I remember this or not, but you hear things on the radio. Well, I listen to NPR, and they'd say things like, the average American ate 40.5 pounds of cheese, a lot of cheese. That's statistics in action, because what they did is they figured out, well, we'll get into that later about how they came up with that number. But so here's the basic structure for the mathematical structure behind these things. And I'm not focusing on mathematic notation. That's sort of a feature of how I approach the course, because I suspect that you aren't that interested in the mathematic notation. You're more interested in the mechanics of how to do it and talking about what it means. So the mean is the sum of all the values divided by the number of values. The median is the middle value, but you have to sort it first. The mode is the most frequent value, and the mid-range is the average. So just adding two values together, the highest and the lowest, adding them together and dividing by two. So we're going to use some quantitative data from the Google Doc that we've got here. So you need to click on this link. This is not the same Google Doc. This is from a past class, because I wasn't sure how fast people would get in here and put the information in. Normally we use the same data from the day that we've been working. And so copy data set one. It says copy the quantitative data. So there's a little wrinkle there in terms of you picking out which one of these is quantitative, checking in on making sure you understand that. I'll give you a second to think about that while I get this over here. Okay. So if you're looking at this Google Doc and you're thinking which one is quantitative, remember you should be thinking about which are numbers. And so this one in the middle is the quantitative set. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it here. Okay, I got a bunch of numbers. So to do the mean, median, mode, and mid-range, I'm going to show both the sort of a by hand approach, and then I'm going to show the Excel approach. And then you're going to do the same thing on this set here, and then you're going to answer the reflection question. So if we look at the definition of mean, it says sum of all the values divided by the number of values. Well, we've seen sum, so we can do equals sum. And then we've got our answer here. And then I can do equals count. And I can find out how many there are. And by the way, I can see on the side here that there's a count of 11 down at the bottom. It says the count. So that confirms that we're counting correctly, but that's the count function in Excel. And then I'm doing division. So I'm taking the total divided by the count, and I get this number, 8,755. Now I'm going to show you the formula, which in Excel is just average. Now, if you're working in a different language, you're going to notice that some of these words are different, so we'll need to address that. This has rounded the answer for me. There are more decimals back there. There they are. And it's an interesting question in math about, where do we round? When do we round? How do we round? So I don't have any easy answers for you, but I will promote rounding. Rounding is a part of being able to talk about the number. If we have so many decimals, it can get in the way of making sense of what we're talking about. Median is just the middle number, but we need to make sure we sort it first. So again, I'll go over here to my sort and filter tool, smallest to largest, and then I'll need to figure out what's inside. Now, I noticed that this 8,000 did not get sorted, so I need to go back to custom sort, and I need to make sure it says my data doesn't have headers, so I didn't have that clicked. So let me try again. There, now it's working. So just a quick note, little attention to detail there, right? I did the thing, I expected it to do something, but I went back and I looked at it to verify that it worked before I moved on to the next step. That's just an important part of problem solving, is to check in with your process. There's 11 values, so that means there's one in the middle. There's 5 down here. There's 5 up here. It looks like this number is the one in the middle. I'm going to verify that using my median formula. And the median formula, it did not need to be sorted in order to find that. So for instance, if I scrambled this up, how could I scramble this up? Well, I'll just give you another example. 2, 4, 1, 5, 7. 2, 4, 1, 5, 7. The number in the middle is 1, but it hasn't been sorted yet. Let's use the median tool to find the answer. The answer is 4. And if I put them in order, 1, 2, 4, 5, 7. Yes, 4 is the one in the middle. So my point is that with the median tool, one of the benefits is you don't actually have to sort in order to find the middle number. And when you have really large data sets, like we're going to work in this next sheet, has a 10,000 rows in it, it's kind of nice to not have to worry about whether we've sorted it correctly or not. All right. And then the mode is looking for repeats. And in fact, we have no repeats here. So the answer to the mode is that there isn't one. This is very common in small data sets where the things are spread out a lot. So we're talking about the number of days people have been alive. We don't have that many people in this data set. And so it's not surprising that there's no mode. When I do mode on that data set, it does give me an answer, and it gives me the correct answer, which is that it's not applicable. It's sort of an error message, but it's giving you an important piece of information, which is that there is no mode in this data set. Okay, and then the mid-range, the final one, we've got it sorted, which is nice, because what we really need here is just to take the top and the bottom and then take the average divided by 2. So I could divide it by 2, or I could say average and then click on the top and the bottom. I'll show you both ways. Equals average. Here, instead of dragging down, I don't want to take the average of everything. I'm going to use a comma to separate, and I'll put in the second number. So I'm taking the average of 2 numbers, A3 and A13, and it gives me the same answer. So this is the mean, the median, the mode, and the mid-range. All of these are ways to talk about what's typical in the data set. If we look at the data set and we think about what's typical, 7,000, 8,000 days, these are typical. And this shouldn't be surprising, because if we take a class of students at NLU in the undergraduate program taking statistics, many of them are going to be around the same age. I don't know what 7,000 or 8,000, high 7s, low 8s. We're talking probably 19, 20 years old. I can just check here, equals 19 times 365. Okay, so look more towards the 20-year-old, and even a little bit older, maybe 21, 22. So that's what's typical for this class of students. So the mean and the median are both in that kind of range. The mean is higher than the median by a couple of years. The median is only 8,000, but the mean is up around 8,800. The mid-range is way high. It's really not representative of what's typical. We had a person who had 10,000 days and a person who had 16,000 days. I'll let you guess who the person who had 16,000 days was. And those people are not typical of the rest of the data set. So again, Measure of center is a way of talking about what's typical. And I want you to do this one, and then I want you to answer the reflection question. Now, just a hint on this, and I did mention it in the instructions here. Students picked random cities, and then I went out and I found some internet information about how big the city was. And the problem here is that, say I'm trying to do this, and I say, oh, let's just take the average right now. So it gives me this number. Now, this should strike you as a little suspicious because this number and this number are exactly the same. And that's because Excel doesn't see this as a number at all. And you can kind of see this in the formatting of this, which says general. There's no way to force this Excel to say, hey, let's just make this a number. You can say number, but it's not changing the fact that if I try to add that to this, it still doesn't know how to do it because it's like this has words in it. So we got to fix that. As I pointed out in the Word document, 1 million is 1, 0,000, 0,000. So then the question becomes, well, how do I make something that's like 1.3 million or 2.6 million? How do I turn it into a full number? I'm going to give you a second to think about that, and then I'll tell you my approach. Okay, my approach is to take the number and multiply by a million. So 8.258 times 1 million. And because I like to use autofill, what I would probably do is I would go over here and say, take this and multiply by 1, 2, 3. Now, initially gives me the value error, but once I go in here and I delete the word million and press enter, then this number shows up. So I could do autofill here, again, take away the word million. However you want to do it, we want to end up with a list of the numbers so that as I'm taking the average, now this average is not going to be right because I'm looking at the numbers in millions, but this number is going to be closer to the truth now. So if you want to see the commas here, there is a comma button in the center that helps see the value because you have a very big number. You really don't need the decimals here as an example of where having a decimal number of people wouldn't really make sense. So right now, of the first 3 numbers, this is my average. So at the end of the day, you want all of these numbers, but as actual numbers, then you can do mean, median, mode, mid-range, similar to how we did over here. I would expect the mode to give you the same result, but you should have numbers for mean, median, and mid-range. And then you're going to answer those questions, and we'll move on to the next set. All right, I'm going to stop there.